Welcome to the lab. This is the Baked Scientist channel where we explore the why so you know how. Do you want to learn how to turn this delicious summer fruit into this refreshing sweet frozen treat? Well, subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned. Now let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and cut up this watermelon. So I found that you need about 4 cups of watermelon juice to make this sorbet. And to get that, I cut up about 6 cups of watermelon chunks. And then we're gonna get our ingredients together. So we have our sugar, our corn syrup, and as you can see, corn syrup is a liquid, and so we're gonna use this. This is gonna be our sugars, and then we're also gonna be using lemon juice to add a little bit more tartness to counterbalance that sweetness. And then we're also gonna be adding cornstarch, which if you've seen our cornstarch video, you will know the benefits to cornstarch, our baking basics video. But cornstarch will actually help be a stabilizer in this sorbet, so that it can keep the consistency of our end product. And so first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and blend up your watermelon chunks to make your juice. And I just added all of my watermelon to the blender and blended it until a juice was formed. And we are going to go ahead and strain this so we get out any of the seeds or pulp or anything like that that we don't want in our final sorbet. So just go ahead and blend everything up, and then we're going to go and strain all the pulp and all the other things out so that we are left with our pure watermelon juice. So once our juice is ready, like I said, we're gonna go ahead and strain it. And I just pour mine straight through a sieve, and then use a spatula to kind of push through any remaining juice. You don't want to force any of the pulp or seeds or anything like that through, but you do want to make sure you get all the juice out, because we do need at least 4 cups of watermelon juice to make this sorbet. Once we have all the juice out of our pulp, then we're going to go ahead and discard the pulp and add the juice back to our blender. So we're going to be adding the juice back to the blender because we are going to go ahead and mix everything up in the blender. You can whisk it in if you just want to do the whisk, but because I'm already using the blender, I'm going to go ahead and just add everything to the blender. So as you can see here, like I mentioned earlier, 6 cups of watermelon chunks actually gave us just a little bit more than 4 cups of watermelon juice, which is perfect. So that's what we need for this recipe. So now let's go ahead and add everything else. We'll add our sugar. It's important that we have enough sugar in this recipe, and you'll see in a moment why. And then our corn syrup was going to act as a secondary sugar syrup, and it's also going to help with keeping this more creamy and soft sorbet versus icy. And again, we're going to go through some of the science on why that is in a moment. So after you've added your sugars, we're going to go ahead and add our stabilizer, which I mentioned earlier will be cornstarch. And again, if you haven't seen our cornstarch video, our baking basics video, please check it out. It's very informative, very interesting. And if you like to know all the different utilities of cornstarch in the kitchen, it's a great video to watch. There's so many different ways you can use cornstarch and so many different things it's good for. One of which is stabilizer, which we're using in this recipe. And then we're also going to use some lemon juice to, again, cut that sweetness and add a little bit of acid so that it's not just overly shockingly sweet. So we're going to go ahead and blend this back up. And then we're going to do something called an egg test, which is going to really help us understand the science of why we're adding so much sugar to this. Now that everything has been blended together, let's go ahead and jump into some of the science. Sugar actually interferes with the formation of ice crystals, and this is because sugar actually dissolves in water. And the sugar molecules that are incorporated in the water after they dissolve interrupt the formation of ice crystals, resulting in smaller ice crystals versus large, like ice cube size ice crystals. The smaller the ice crystal, the creamier the texture of your end product is going to be. And because corn syrup is a liquid form of sugar, it also helps to maintain the texture of the end product or end sorbet because it doesn't freeze. And when it dissolves in the water, it actually helps to keep it maintain its smoothness and softness because of its ability to stay liquid at cold temperatures. By maintaining a proper amount of sugar in our solution, we're able to keep a creaminess to our sorbet without it having any kind of extra milk or dairy to it. So that's the key to keeping a creamy sorbet. And one way to test that if you have enough sugar is to actually use a raw egg. So a raw egg will actually float in perfectly balanced sugar solution. Because sugar is dissolved in water, it increases the density of the water. And as a result, the less dense egg will float on if there's a precise amount of sugar in your solution. Think of it as how oil floats on water. The oil is lighter than water, so it will float. Same with the egg. The egg is lighter than the sugar solution, so it will float. So if you add this is a great test to use, especially if you want to make sure that you have the right balance of sugar in your solution before you freeze your sorbet. If you have too little sugar, the raw egg will actually sink to the bottom, and the sorbet will have a very icy and hard texture if you continue on with the recipe. If you have too much sugar, the egg will just completely sit on top on the surface of the solution, and the sorbet will be really slushy, and it won't ever actually freeze to a point where you can scoop it. If you have the right amount of sugar, the egg will float enough to where it reveals at least a quarter size amount of the shell. And this means that you have the perfect amount of sugar, the perfect balance of sugar, and your end product will freeze perfectly. It'll have a nice scoopable creamy texture, and it won't be overly icy or overly syrupy. So next we're going to work on actually creating the sorbet, the frozen sorbet. To do this, you do want to cool your sorbet solution in the fridge, especially if you're using an ice cream maker. If you're not using an ice cream maker, you can go ahead and put this in a shallow dish, and every about 30 minutes you'll take it out the freezer and whip it up to kind of whip in some air and put it back until it's a consistency that you want. If you have an ice cream maker, you are going to add the sorbet to the ice cream maker after it's set in the fridge for about 1 to 2 hours until it's nice and chilled, so that it can freeze in the ice cream maker efficiently. So I did have to churn mine for about 15-20 minutes for it to get to a kind of hard slushy consistency, which is what you want before you put it in the freezer if you have an ice cream maker. If you don't, like I said, you can go ahead and just pour the mixture straight into like a dish, whatever dish you want to freeze your sorbet in, and it would be best to use like a shallow pan, like a baking dish, so that you can whip it up with a whisk or a fork every about 30 minutes until it does reach that kind of hard slushy consistency, and then you would let it freeze so you can scoop it. So you just want to churn it until you get that consistency that you need, and then we will move on to the next step. I would like to take a moment to say, if you enjoy this kind of content and you love learning the science behind food and how different ingredients work together to create the amazing dishes that you love, then please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share our videos, There's so much more content we have coming up, and we'd love to just share it with you all. And in order to do that, we do need your support. So please like and subscribe and share and leave comments. And I hope you enjoy the videos and are learning something that you can apply in your own kitchen. You learn the why, so you know how. Here you can see that the sorbet is getting to that texture that we want, so we're going to let it turn a little bit longer, and then you can see that it gets a little bit harder and a little bit firmer, and that's what we want. We want that nice kind of hard slushy consistency, because when we put it in the freezer, it'll freeze up more solid, and then it'll be the perfect texture that we want. What we're doing here is we're really just whipping in air to give it more body and not just like a syrup pretty much. So now that sorbet is ready, we're going to go ahead and pour it into our container that we're going to be using in the freezer. And I have this ice cream container we're going to go ahead and pour the sorbet into, and then we'll put it in the freezer for about an hour or 2 hours until it's a little bit more solidified, and then we'll come back and see the final result. So here we have it. Nice, delicious, creamy, soft and smooth watermelon sorbet. With just a few ingredients and understanding of a little bit of sugar science, we're able to create this nice and creamy and smooth sorbet without even any dairy. It's just fruit and sugar. So I hope you enjoy this video, and until next time, happy baking!